back, Wizards. This is the 1,000 subscriber special. I'd like to thank all of you for reaching this milestone. I know it's not much for some of those big channels out there, but for me, it's the first big milestone, 1,000 subscribers. So what I will give you in return is several macro counts rolled into one video with something that I've not done publicly before, and a little bit of Fibonacci analysis on the macro time frame. And we'll start with Bitcoin. All right, so this is the primary Bitcoin count. I have an alternate. Okay, right now, today, I'm only going to show the primary counts. But here's the evidence I have supporting this macro level Bitcoin primary count. So Elliott says that almost every impulse wave contains one and only one extension. It can have up to two. That is possible, but it can never have three. So, looking at this wave as a whole, as I have it labeled, you have one extension. Wave 1 has been extended. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you want to count all the waves together, you should have 9 because you have one extension, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's your 9 waves right there of all similar size amplitude. So your biggest wave, well, your two biggest waves of all are the 2 and the 4, right? So your second wave is a zigzag. All right, came down in 5, 3-wave move, and a quick 5. Your fourth wave here is a triangle. Now, I know a lot of you are going to look and say, well, that is no triangle. What the hell are you talking about? Well, let's get down into the nitty and the gritty, all right, and see what we're looking at here. All right, we have a zigzag down, all right, that ended with a truncation here, which kind of makes sense because you had a pretty bullish B wave here. All right, but if you break this down, all right, you have a 5-wave move here, all right, diagonal, and then a triangle, B wave, and then to break down this final move, all right, you got here. I'll come to a smaller time frame. It should be labeled. Oh, that's too small. Hold on. It'll be here, I believe. Well, maybe I don't have it labeled on this chart. But regardless, you need to finish the structure. Okay, so you have a 1 and a 2, and a 1 and a 2, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for 3, a 4, and an ending diagonal for 5 that truncates. Okay, and then the rest of this is a zigzag. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, triangle, C, A, B, C. Okay, A, B, C. Right here. All right, let me go back to the weekly because that's where my, the daily, because that's where my labels are. Okay, I thought I had this labeled at one point. I must have got rid of them. Zigzag here, okay, but that's not a zigzag. Well, what the heck? How can you have a component of a triangle that isn't a zigzag? You're an idiot. No. A triangle is allowed to be the final component of a triangle. And that's where the trickery comes in. And I have some very convincing evidence for this trickery here. Okay. Here, I'll throw some small labels on this. A, B, what the heck is going on here? There we go. C, D, E. Let me go ahead and fix that here. Okay. Oops, I've dragged the wrong one. Okay. A triangle is allowed to be the final component of a triangle. That is a thing that is allowed to happen, and it contracts over time. So that the bigger picture here of this whole triangle, this is a contracting triangle, right here, boom. And you actually, it's actually interesting that you have alternation of a triangle within a triangle. What do I mean by that? Because the larger triangle contracts, but it's not a running triangle. It's a regular triangle. And the triangle within the triangle is a running triangle. A B exceeds the start of A, right? And I know what you're about to say. Well, E then exceeded the end of D. No, that rule only matters for the end of the wave. Now, when they're all zigzags, naturally that can occur. But a triangle is allowed to make a new high and complete within the structure. Therefore, it's very, very tricky. All right, so now let's look at these fourth waves. A very common retracement for a fourth wave is you're looking for 38.2% or 50%, something like that. More important is the guideline. Okay, you want to reach the fourth wave of lesser degree, the prior fourth wave of lesser degree, right? So if you look at this fourth wave here, I'm talking about the yellow circle here, right? What we have is here you can clearly see, I don't have it labeled, but you can clearly see the previous fourth wave is right here, right? Within this third wave. Okay, so you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right here. The previous fourth wave is here. And that's where the larger fourth wave bottomed nearly exactly right at the end of the previous fourth wave, which is a very common thing to happen. But even more interesting is what's going on there? Oh, let's go ahead and do this. Even more interesting, I don't need this 90% line on here. Is that if we measure the retracement level for the fourth wave, assuming that this is the 1, 2, right? This is your 1, 2 and not something bigger out here, or this being your 1, 2. If this is your 1, 2, you get a 38.2 retracement, which is what a wave 4, a fourth wave, is supposed to do. If we assume something bigger and that this wasn't a triangle and you come all the way out here, well, that's just gobbledygook. That's nothing, right? Which indicates to you, in hindsight at least, that it's not what you think it is. But if you come here, right, it is what you think it is. Well, that being said, that the extreme of this fourth wave then should also retrace 38.2% of this wave. This is a bigger one, right? So you have a triangle, right? And the extreme of that triangle should retrace 38.2% of this third wave. What do we got? Dang near, boom, right on. The extreme of this triangle hits 38.2% of the previous third wave. Right? So we have these little bits of evidence in hindsight telling us, what's going on. There is alternate counts, okay, but this is the primary. So assuming that a top from this point, we should not have bottomed in the previous fourth wave, and we didn't, okay? And if this is going to be a wave 2 of higher degree, then you expect to reach the price area of this fourth wave, which it has not, which is an indication that this is not complete. This move, this correction that's happening, is not a completed one. All right, so down from this high, we have a clearly visible 5 waves. Zigzag triangle alternation, okay, and this is a barrier triangle here for 4. Barrier triangle, wave 4. Essentially, I'll just draw the trend lines for it, right? But this is what a barrier triangle, if I can find my other line, there it is, looks like, right? After it's all said and done, you have your A, B, C, D, E, okay? And this line slants towards the way it's going to break, right? And then the horizontal line is the one that does break. So barrier triangle for 4, zigzag for 2, quick 5. What does the book tell us? After a triangle, wave 5 is either very quick and brief, or it's an egregiously long extension. So what do we get after this triangle? An egregiously long extension. What do we get after this triangle? Short, quick, and brief. There's not going to be an in-between for a fifth wave after a fourth wave triangle. Okay? It's either going to be really fast or really long and extended. And here's another form of alternation following a triangle. We have so many forms of alternation following these triangles within this overall pattern. It's crazy. So since then, okay, we have 5 down, which starts with 5, must end with 5, right? We can't break this high and this be 5. You have to continue down and complete the pattern. So what this is completing here, okay, I'm not doing any micro. I know what some of you are interested in, right? When is the exact dollar of when this is going to end, okay? And I don't know the answer to that question. And I'll tell you another secret here of the industry. Nobody does. No one knows the exact dollar, okay? And if they just so happen to predict it and it worked out, they got lucky. And they're never going to do it again, okay? There's a big secret here that I just told you. Shouldn't be a secret, but for some reason it is. Now within this zigzag now, right, this is a B wave zigzag. We're just looking for 535. That's it. Okay, and that's finishing in this time frame. So one of the waves should be intricately subdivided. This is alternation within a zigzag, and one should be, kind of more simple and straightforward. All right, so in this wave you have an intricate, the A wave in this case is an intricately subdivided first, or an A wave, okay, with a first wave extension. All right, so you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is your first wave. That's your 1. Zigzag for 2, 3, triangle 4, quick 5. Okay, and that's your A wave. Within the B wave. Your B wave within the B wave is just a flat. Okay, you have, this is a couple ways to count this, but I like to prefer that this is a double zigzag. Okay, so zigzag, zigzag for a double zigzag. That's your A wave within your B wave within your B wave. Okay, here's a zigzag here, and then you get 5 down for your complete your flat. 3, 3, 5 flat pattern. wave. Hello, why won't this erase? There we go. I'll just wait on the C wave to finish. Okay, so whenever you get 5 waves in here, there's an extension or 2 in there. Then this whole thing will be retraced according to this count. Now one method I use to help find the end of these things is called channeling. All right, 3-wave moves are contained within parallel lines. So if we start at the beginning of this and we go to the end of the B wave, you drag it up to the end of your A wave. All right, this whole move is contained within parallel lines. At least so far, indicating that it's a 3-wave move. You use the channel to help you predict when something is over with. Okay, these are not things that you use to enter on because it touched a line or anything like that. Okay, but for instance, let's say, right, this finishes and you come down and you break through the bottom of the channel. Okay, that has now indicated that this, whatever this was, is over with. Okay, because it's no longer contained by parallel lines, so it's moved on to something different. All right, the same goes the other way. Right, I have an alternate count that isn't as Fibonacci pleasing. All right, but I have an alternate count. So if this broke up through the top of the parallel channel, well, that indicates that whatever this was, okay, was wrong, right? That you're entering the 3rd wave. Now, likely you're not going to just break up through the top like that. If it's bullish, right, you're going to come down, and then you'll break through the top of it. Okay, without ever breaking the bottom of this. So, something else. Stand by. Stock market is similar. Okay, they're all going to be similar, like each index. However, they are slightly different in the way they're doing it. Okay, so this is the S&P 500. Here, I'll go bigger to like the weekly time frame, so we can see what's happened all the way up to this point, right? So my original count had, this is just the progression of how you do things, right? You go with something that is probable, and then when that probable thing becomes invalidated, then you move on to whatever's the next probable, right? So this appeared to be 5 down. And the whole time I was saying that the 5th wave was too short, okay, but we can't throw everything into a tight, tiny little box all the time. But it turns out that since this high broke, okay, this hasn't broken yet. I kind of hope it does, because that would open up a lot more opportunity for the future. And I'll explain that in a moment. But this 5 waves down, okay, ended up being not that. It ended up being a very rare pattern called a triple zigzag. But what that caused then, I had to go back through and recount all of this. All right, and what I've come up to is that this was a smaller degree 4 and part of a 3rd wave extension. So we have 1, 2, 1, 2, okay, 3, 4, 3, finishing 4, 5. Okay. Now this is going to be a flat. All right, so you got a triangle for 4 and a what will be a flat for the larger degree wave 4. All right, and some couple things you can look at so that you have a high probability prediction that the 4th wave isn't over yet. All right, the first one here is time. Okay, so if you just pull a simple timeline on this, right, from the beginning of it until the end of it, right, you project that out to where the next one starts, right? Like to this point, we haven't even reached 1-to-1 in time yet, and this is supposed to be a larger degree fourth wave, let alone this A wave, which I don't even believe was 38. We'll put it. It was just beyond 236 and almost 38.2, right? Not that hitting those lines exactly matters, because it doesn't. But what does matter is that this fourth wave should be bigger in time than a smaller fourth wave, right? So this should not be the entire thing. Um, Now there's other options that this is not a fourth wave at all, and then it's a fifth wave extension. However, it doesn't quite match up with the rest of the stock market, and I'll show you that when we get to the Dow Jones. Right, so there is a cheap way to make this 5 waves, okay? This does not, so if you were to count that this is your first wave, right here, and then you got a second wave flat, 3, 4. This fourth wave doesn't come into the top of this one here by like just a couple dollars, right? It meets the rule. It doesn't seem very probable. But when you look at the rest of the stock market in totality, it doesn't really make sense for this to be labeled in such a manner when, for instance, the Dow Jones or the Russell, I can't get to match that wave degree. It's impossible. It doesn't exist. So that's why this is the primary count. And when this is finished, hopefully making a new high, and what I mean by that is, and we're in a very similar spot with Bitcoin, as you can see. We're just waiting on that last few teeny tiny subways to finish, okay, before it's finished. Same thing right here in the stock market, just waiting on those last few subwaves to finish up, okay, in this B wave, which hopefully creates a new high. Why do I say that? Because right now, if it ended, it's not a requirement for a flat to make a new high. It's not. It just has to get to 90% retracement of the A wave, which it has. I can draw the retracement of this right now. Let's make sure I'm in linear first, because that's what matters for retracements. All right, so we've reached 90% retracement. So the requirements for a flat are complete. They're done. You don't have to make a new high here. But in order to get a expanded flat, then you need to break the high. Otherwise, you just simply say it was over right now. You simply turn, and then you're going to end. You can go slightly beyond, right? You're looking for essentially 1-to-1 with A and C, which isn't a huge deal. Let's see here. If I measure 1-to-1 with A and C, let's just say it was over, right? Then you would already be going slightly beyond the end. Okay, which is fine. I just wanted to squeeze a few more dollars out of this move whenever it's time to buy. Notice it's not. I don't think it's time to buy. Right? I don't buy tops. This is what it comes down to. I've had a lot of comments on my YouTubes lately that you're wrong, you're awful, blah blah blah. Why? Because my count got invalidated. That's what Elliott wave is. You're trying to find out what is going to happen. So because this high broke, that means I should buy? No, that's not what that means. That means you go to your next probable count. And if that next probable count tells you to buy, then yeah, absolutely. But my next probable count does not tell me to buy. So being wrong is a relative term. Okay? I don't care if it's right or wrong. The end goal here is to turn a profit, not be right or wrong. People who are right don't necessarily make money. You can be wrong and still profit. Okay, so this original count I had where this was a top was wrong. But how many dollars did I lose? No dollars? I mean, in the end, what does it matter? Because I'm not buying that top. I don't buy tops. Okay, so now all I'm waiting for is just to finish, which will preferably break this high. Okay, because that's going to suck the most people in psychologically, right? They're going to, the most people will enter this market because by virtue of this high breaking. And when it turns and it comes down in 5, then it can expand and come down even further beyond 1-to-1 with A. And that's what I'd preferably like to see. But I mean, it doesn't matter what I think or what I want. It's just I take whatever the market is willing to give me. And from a macro level, it hasn't given me any long-term buy-ins yet. Waves are phonies, right? Let's go back. Let's go back and look at a couple of B waves. Okay, so what I'm saying is this is a phony. This is a phony wave. This is a speculator's paradise. This is to draw in as much people as possible and then dump on them. Okay. Look at this B wave within the triangle. Breaks the high, dump. This is a D wave, but D waves have similar characteristics of B waves. D wave, break the high, dump. After the 2000 crash, B wave, bull market's back, baby. Just break the high, dump. Right? They're all fake. Now let's go back to some Fibonacci analysis to help us confirm what we're looking at is real. Now we're expecting then our fourth wave to meet a 38.2% retracement, right? We have an extended fifth, okay? So it's not as straightforward as just measuring the whole thing. Because as we could see, if we measure the whole thing up to this high, it's gobbledygook. Okay, we're nothing anywhere close to the 38.2, right? But the extension, you have an extension in here. You have a fifth wave extension. So where you need to measure this from is the start of the fifth wave extension, which is here. And then what do we have? A 38.2% retracement for the wave 4. Okay. We come up here, trying to confirm some wave 4s, right? We have a fourth wave here, okay, on this triangle, which started, it's this light blue count, right? It's the fourth wave of this light blue count. So if we measure from the start of that wave 3 up to this D wave, we get a 38.2% retracement. All right. Now, why didn't I go to the 3? Because what the book tells us is that it's some portion of the fourth wave that will subdivide the impulse into a Fibonacci number. Okay. What we're used to doing is going to the end of wave 3, but we're not really going to the end of the third wave whenever we're measuring that. What we're really going is to the start of the A wave. Right? That's where we're really going, is the start of the A wave. It has nothing to do with the end of the third wave. It has everything to do with some portion of the fourth wave that subdivides the entire impulse. Most commonly, it is the start of the A wave, which just so happens to coincide with the end of the third. There's the misconception. Okay. Now, we're only going to know this in hindsight, but what we can do is create, so now we're looking at the bigger one, the circle 3, right? We can create a cluster of points to look for a reaction from. So if we come up to the start of the A wave, just so happens to coincide with the end of the third wave. Okay, then we find one cluster here around 2600, right, which meets the guideline of retracing within the price territory of the previous fourth wave. All right. We don't know if this is done yet, but I'll just show just as an assumption. Okay, let's say this goes up and breaks the high by a little bit and goes to, I don't know, let's say 5,000. Okay, then we have another cluster point here. All right, so it's going to be one of those two. Whenever this finishes, we won't know till it's done. But you have a cluster of points then that will affect what this 38.2% retracement is going to be. All right. Now, another option here is that we have a third wave extension, right? So it is possible as well that, and they're so close together that it shouldn't make much of a difference, but you should be measuring from here, but you're going to come up with roughly the same numbers in this case, right? So that's why it doesn't really matter all too much. All right, but it's a special little trick. All right, and that's one thing that most people haven't read the book deep enough to know, is that it's not the third wave that you're measuring. It's some portion of the fourth wave. Now, you only get 2 points with a regular three-wave move on a flat or zigzag or something like that. Triangle, you get 3 points to measure from. Okay, that way, or if you're measuring for a fifth wave, you get 3 points to measure from on the downside. All right. So anyway, yeah, that's the S&P 500, and I'll move on to the Dow. Same type of subdivision. Here's your expanding triangle for your fourth wave, and you're looking for your second fourth wave. So all of that is the same. The difference between the Dow, okay, and the S&P 500 is that one, it's already broken the high, which is fine. Okay, it's only a minimum 90% retracement is all you need for a flat. You can go higher, but now we have the option, since this high broke, to make an expanded flat. Okay, and however all that goes, who cares what this is? I don't know what that is. These aren't targets. Okay, they're just labels floating out in space just to illustrate that you're looking for 5 ways down. Okay. But same triple zigzag, very rare, by the way. I don't think you're going to find another one on this time scale ever in the history of the chart, like going back forever. I don't think you're going to find one. But you can go back to see the Dow video. I explain all this, how all this broke down. Okay. But regardless, same type of thing. This one's a little bit more subdivided because I used it in the last Dow video. All right, but the important thing about this is that unlike the S&P 500, where I can take the poor man's way out and try to make it a 5-wave move, you cannot do that with the Dow. There is no legal way to make this a 5-wave move. This is 3 waves all day long. All right, can you make it a 1-2, 1-2? Yeah, a poor man's one, a really, really messed up looking one. You can say 1, so use the same flat, and that's 2, and then you're putting in 1 and 2. But this is so huge that for you to believe that is your primary and probable way to count this, I think you're misleading yourself and not looking directly at what's in front of you, which is a very obvious 3-wave move. I mean, not only that, it is bigger than anything else leading up to it, right? All of this. Like even like you go back to the 2s over here. There's a 2, right? So you're telling me like a 2 within a 5th wave extension is just 8 times as big as like the parents? Come on, man. Let's be realistic. Okay, let's call a spade a spade. If it looks like a duck and it walks like a duck and it's quacking and it's telling you, I'm a duck, I'm a duck, well, you should probably consider that it's a duck. I'm not going to spend too much time here on the Dow Jones because I have a whole other video just released 2 weeks ago or something that explains the whole thing. The important pull away I wanted to take out for this video was that unlike the S&P 500, I cannot subdivide this as a 5-wave move, which is important to know because do you think the S&P is going to shoot off into the oblivion while the Dow is impossible for it to? It's not going to happen, okay? So you have to take the totality of the market into consideration on what's your most probable account for the other indexes. All right, let's pull up the Nasdaq 100. To use better than the 100 because there's 3,000 stocks in this index, and the Nasdaq 100 is grossly overweighted by 7 stocks. Actually 8 if you count Google Choice. But this one, so I'm leaving this for now. Oops, that's misplaced. I'm leaving this for now as an impulse, but is an A wave of a zigzag. All right. Reason being is because this one seems much further off from breaking this high than the other indexes do. So see how, I mean, I can always change it back. Right? I mean, I can make this a triple zigzag too. It's not a big deal. We'll see how it ends up. Regardless, I think you're going to wind up in the same spot. Okay, which is going to be somewhere down here. But one thing to keep careful of, so I can't get this subdivided into a 5-wave count either. All right, and the Nasdaq 100 is the same structure. All right, I cannot get this subdivided into a 5-wave count because of this. All right, this is a clear impulse here. This is a double zigzag. And you're just looking for an impulse to complete up here for your C wave. So essentially the C wave right here. So zigzag here. Zigzag, right? Zigzag here. It's a diagonal. B, C, okay. So you're connecting 2 zigzags together via this X wave. Double zigzag, that's what a double zigzag is. All right. I can't go 1, 2, 3 like this, okay? Because you don't have enough waves, right? You have this to contend with, and then that's an impulse. That's a 3-wave move. You can't. That's not a 3, right? Now, could you, after the fact, after this is finished, come up and make this a 3? Yes. Okay, and you're going to see a lot of people do that. Again, you have to take the totality of the market into consideration. So is the NASDAQ composite going to shoot off into the oblivion while, say, the Dow Jones, which I just brought up, can't possibly do that? No. Okay. So this count here for the NASDAQ remains a zigzag. Can make it a flat if it gets to 90%. I think it's getting close. Where are we at here? Let me go into linear. Gotta change it, put the 90 back on there. Yeah, we're not to 90% yet. So until it gets there, I have to keep this labeled as a zigzag, which is not a big deal. It's the same, you're going to get the same thrust down anyway. You still need a C wave. All right. Point being, that's why I said all these indexes subdivide slightly differently, but they're all in the same place as far as what wave to expect next. Okay. So Dow's expecting a C wave next. S&P is expecting a C wave next. Nasdaq expecting a C wave next. Right? You run into problems when you're saying, well, in the S&P, I'm expecting that we're going to shoot off into a third of a third extension, but the Dow is going to give me a C wave into the oblivion of the depths of hell. Yeah, you're wrong. That's just how that's going to work out. It's just you're going to be wrong. All right. So while they could be different patterns, you should be in the stock market as a whole in totality, you should be expecting the same thing on the bigger picture to occur next. Okay. Here's actually a good example. All right. Um, Here on the Nasdaq composite, and I don't have this part labeled, but in the S&P we had expanding triangle, right? This is not an expanding triangle. Your third wave ended here, okay, and then you got a running flat for your fourth wave, okay? So while the S&P and the Dow were correcting here, the Nasdaq had to finish its impulse, right? And then it lined up with the rest of the market. Right? But in the end, after the whole entirety of the fourth wave was completed, here, they were on the same path. They're actually on the same path from here to here. But they got different patterns leading up to that point. Okay? So don't confuse that the small time frames have to align. It's the large time frames that should align. So on this large time frame, you can't be expecting the S&P to shoot off into a third of a third while the Dow shoots down into a C wave into the depths of hell. Just not going to be a thing that happens. All right, let's look at the Russell. Agrees that we're different from the S&P and the Dow, that the Nasdaq and the Russell both share, right? The Nasdaq and the Russell both had to finish their third waves before then lining up with the rest of the market. So the Russell gave us a double zigzag fourth wave, whereas the Nasdaq gave us a running flat fourth wave, whereas the Dow and the S&P gave us an expanding triangle fourth wave. But in the end, they all lined up and completed their fourth waves at the same time, which is the same thing you should be expecting to see on this larger degree fourth wave. All right, so same thing with the NASDAQ. I have an impulse down, okay, a flat for the B wave, which is different than the NASDAQ, right? And the S&P and the Dow. The Dow gave us a zigzag. The S&P and the NASDAQ are giving us double zigzags. The Russell's giving us a flat for the B wave. That all of that is okay. That's different. They're all B waves. They're all going in the same direction. Okay? The directionality is what's important. So every index gave us this. Every index gave us this. Every index will give us this. The internal subdivisions of each of those, okay, doesn't matter. I mean, it does matter, but they can be different, and they are different. Same thing happened over here, right? Like it started here. So this in the S&P was an A wave and a B wave and a C wave and a D wave and an E wave, right? You had the same directionality going at the same time with the Russell. They were just different. It was a different pattern. Same thing here. Just a different pattern, that's all. Directionality would be the same. So they don't all have to be flats or expanded flats. Some could be zigzags, which is why I have the NASDAQ still labeled as a zigzag. Okay. Directionality-wise, it will be the same. Anyway, the flat, right? You have a zigzag A wave, a flat B wave, and this will be 5. 3, 3, 5, flat B. And down on smaller time frames, same thing with all the other ones. You're just waiting for the very final subwaves to complete. Now this is going to be an expanded flat, right? Because this B wave exceeded the start of the A wave, right? And already it is an expanded flat, right? You're just waiting for it to finish, whether that's already done or it has a little bit more to go up to here, whatever it is. It's an expanded flat for B and the Russell. Okay. Now some of you people, it's not all of you, it's some of you people, have some maturity to overcome in the coming months. All right, and you're very emotional. And so I had a video on the Russell that came out when this low broke, right? And it confirmed that we're in a bear market, is what I said. And it still did. It still confirmed we're in a bear market, all right? Because we're getting a counter trend doesn't change that. But by virtue of us getting a counter trend, now people, I feel, are emotionally buying, right? And I think that's a bad idea. Personally, I don't think you should be buying tops because then you get stuck and you can't get out. If you buy a bottom, right, whether it's a true bottom or not, right? Let's say you're counting for just as a for instance, right? Let's say you were counting this down and you're like, yeah, there's my bottom right there. I'm going to buy that, right? And then it came up and it wiped out, and you were cash, right? No leverage involved. And you're like, crap, I was wrong. Yes, you were. But you got 5 waves here, right? And 5 waves gets retraced 100% of the time. Maybe not completely retraced. It gives a significant retrace at 100% of the time. So this is bottom buying. That's what you want to do. Okay. So if you buy a bottom, even if you're wrong, you have a reasonable degree of certainty that even if you are wrong, you will find a bottom and it will come back. And then maybe you thought this was 1-2, right? Boom, 1-2. And you were wrong again. And you bought here. Well, you bottom bought. So it did eventually bottom and it came back and you got up to here and you're like, boom, there's the end of my second wave and I'm selling. Well, you were wrong here and you were wrong here. But guess what happened? You turned at 11% profit by being wrong. Okay? That's not going to be the case if you top buy. If you top buy, say you bought this, right? As an example, say you bought this and it starts going up. You're like, yes, I was right. Nope, you were wrong. But now you have no opportunity to recoup that because you're buying a top. You should sell tops. So let's say you bought down here expecting this to be a flat, and you were right, and you sold here, but it kept going, and you were wrong. You still made 18% because you top sold, not top bought. This is part of my 1,000 subscribers secret here, and it shouldn't be a big secret. This is common knowledge, but for some reason people can't grasp the concept because they're too emotional. Okay. You don't want to top buy and you don't want to bottom sell. It's the same thing. You don't want to sell the bottom. So regardless, that's the Russell 2000. That is the market in totality. We covered Bitcoin. Is an overview for the crypto market as a whole, right? Because the Solana isn't going to take off to the moon while Bitcoin drives to the depths of hell. It's not going to happen. For the same reason that the S&P 500 isn't going to shoot to the moon while the Dow Jones dumps to the depths of hell. It's not going to happen. So put everything into perspective when you're figuring out your probability. It's okay to be wrong. But you have to learn to manage your risk. Okay? Somebody made a comment that because this high broke or something, that I got so many people wrecked or something. I didn't get anybody wrecked. What are you talking about? I didn't tell anybody to sell that. So grow up. Till then, have a happy holiday. If you celebrate on the holidays. Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Hanukkah, all the holidays that you all celebrate. Spend time with your family. Have a good one.